Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Wareham Finance Committee meeting. We are doing, obviously, as everybody is doing, using Zoom. And we hope we were able to get comfortable using this vehicle. And we'll have a couple more meetings, of course, coming up. And we're all here. And because of the conversation that goes on and we are prone to just jumping in, I'd like if you would wave your hand just in front of your camera and note that you may want to talk. We don't go talking over each other. If that's uncomfortable, you just want to blur it out, we can do that vehicle also. But let's start with that. So we're all here, and first thing on our agenda is catching up with everything that is going on in the school side and municipal side. And asked the superintendent, Kimberly, to come over and give us an update. So Kim, you're on.
Well, thank you. This has been a very busy time for us in the schools. In fact, we're in uncharted territory. We've never had to work in these kind of conditions before, but I would say to you that our faculty, our staff are just simply amazing. The way that we've been able to just hit the ground running, to keep the student engagement, it's nothing less than remarkable. And I certainly want to extend my thanks to the entire staff in the Wareham Public Schools, because if it was not for them, we certainly would not be in the position that we are in. Today, we have served 89,906 meals to students. Every day, we have 10 sites. We send both breakfast and lunch out. On Fridays, we send out meals for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Certainly what we've seen in the last several weeks of this is a gradual increase. We've not seen this level off at all. In fact, today we hit over 800 meals that we distributed just for today. So we do know that there's a need, and we're very happy that we're able to help our families in Wareham. One of the things, as you recall, we've been a one-to-one district for a number of years. We were a one-to-one district in grades 2 through 12. We recently had some Chromebooks that were past their life. They were still working, but they were not being supported as strongly as some of our others. But because of the situation, we did a handout to first grade. So we're now a one-to-one district from grades 1 through 12. And we really believe that this is something that will continue into next year, just given the unknown nature of what's going to happen. One of the areas that we were concerned about are the number of families that were not able to connect with us via the internet. So we started doing calls to people that had not checked in, sending people to visit their homes, etc., just so we would know. We ended up with about 45 families that did not have internet access for some reason or the other. We were able to get hotspots, so we distributed the hotspots to these families. So now we do not have any families in Wareham in the public schools that we know of that are not able to connect. So we're very happy about that. And it was at a pretty low charge to us.
That's terrific.
Yeah, we're very pleased. One of the things that we've really looked at is the social emotional aspect of our students and of our families. So we've been able to maintain that contact with our counselors, our social workers, and our school psychs, just to make sure that we're meeting whatever needs we can. And we certainly have seen an increase in some people with some frustrations. So those are some of the we have some plans going of how we're going to help address those issues. When we first went into this, we went into a lockdown of our buildings. And since that, we really have let very few people walk our hallways, really just the custodians and any people that we had working in the buildings, uh, administrators, clerical. Other than that, there's been no one in the buildings, which has been really helpful for our custodians because we've been able to get a jump on some cleaning and just, we feel a little bit ahead of the game for our summer work. With that said, we certainly did not anticipate some of the budget costs, such as cleaning and sanitizing, supplies and equipment. We're looking at purchasing some of the protective items. We know that when we bring people back into our buildings, we're going to need to be able to do some uh, prevention. So we have some plexiglass coming for certain areas of the building with staff. And we know that we're going to have to expand that for the fall. Thankfully, we've been able to save some money with transportation costs for out of district. Right now, I anticipate saving approximately $417,000. When you looked at our utility costs, that's rather negligible just because of our budget situation last year. We had to reduce the budget once it had already been approved. And we took some money out of the utilities. So we do not see, a significant savings there, maybe $30,000. When we entered into this, we met with the unions and had some discussions about what would happen if we did not return to school, as far as with stipends, etc. And we agreed upon if there was no sports, we were not going to be paying the stipends. I'm not sure. Alan, did you have a question? No. Okay. So
the stipends were for coaching.
Coaching stipends. So with not paying spring stipends, we've saved approximately $30,000. When we look at our out of district cost, one of the discussions that we're having with our out of district schools is what kind of services have you provided to our students? And if you haven't provided services to our students during this time, I have absolutely no indication that I'm going to be paying for that bill at all. If they provided some support and work, then that's something that we're willing to do. Unfortunately, the DESE and the state have said they're not willing to negotiate or lower the tuition costs for out of district schools. And since they're the ones that set it, there's no wiggle room there, and out of district schools are not willing to negotiate. So it's a rather difficult situation, and we're working through that. We're now just getting administrators back into the buildings and clerical back into the buildings. And so one of the first tasks that they're going to fulfill will be to go through our supplies and materials to see what's left. Because we know, we had about a third of the year left to go, and we have supplies that we haven't used. With that, then we fully intend to lower our supply request for the upcoming FY21 budget. How much, I'm not really sure at this point, just because we're just now in that mode. I do know that we have cut our paper order in half for next year. And one of the reasons is we are doing so much online, and it's working pretty well, and we'll continue that next year. So that certainly does reduce the cost. When we started, our school committee had voted the budget of $30,751,930. The town had requested $30,231,616. We had not reached that as of yet. Even with the $30,000,007, we're going to we earmarked approximately 12 staff across the board that we were going to reduce. With what has come, we've received a new request from the town, and certainly very understandable, of $29,800,000 or $87,787. That's a pretty significant reduction for us. For us to get there, we're going to have to go back, have some serious conversations with personnel. One of the first steps we took, administrators have agreed to take a 0% for next year. We certainly are reviewing all our supplies and materials. We're looking at transportation and how that could be reduced. And moving forward to reach that number, there likely will be additional staff reductions. If-
Doctor, just so I understand, from the 30,751,000 down to the 29,087, it's a drop of about what, $1.7 million?
Yes,
That's what you are requesting or have been requested to get to for this fiscal 21.
yes.
So how you doing on that?
Well, it's a slow go.
Yeah, I imagine. Huh? All
Pretty
you
slow.
gotta do is get
I think that's a relatively new number to everybody, given what we're seeing in the projections. So,
Yeah.
you know.
The district has also been awarded $507,000, and this is from the federal government. It's to help offset expenses from the COVID-19. This is going to be issued like a grant, and this number was based on our Title I number. We received approximately 80% of our Title I. This is a grant that can be used over a 2-year period, and examples could be technology, supplies, staffing, anything to maintain district operations. We looked at restoring cuts. The problem, if we use this for personnel and salaries, we then have to pay 8% to the retirement fund of their salary. So one of the decisions that the school committee will need to make will be what this money will be used for and how much money will be used for. My suggestion will be not to use the entire $507,000, just because we're going to be opening a new elementary in the year 2, and not knowing what the budget is going to be in the next several years, I would want to save as much possible revenue as possible. The other things that we have instituted, of course, we've placed a freeze on all purchasing unless it's absolutely critical. We're looking at how do we reduce our utilities. And we've also put a freeze on all professional development, travel, conferences, etc., just as a place to go to save money. So this is, as Derek said, this is a fairly new number for us. So we're still in the process of reviewing our budget, seeing where reductions can be made, making decisions what we can live with and what we cannot. And so we know there's a lot of movement that will happen in the next several weeks to, several months. But until we really have a solid number of this is exactly where we're going to land for FY21, everything is still up in the air.
Kim, are you negotiating with your other unions?
Yes, we've had some discussions, and we are explaining to them the situation that we're in and making request of the unions.
I may be out of sync on this, but are you opening the schools in September?
Oh, that's the $1 million question. We don't know. We
Well, how
are,
can you budget if you don't, you gotta say, if we open, it's gonna cost this. If we don't open, it's gonna cost that. You gotta have some options, don't you?
right, one of the things that we feel pretty fortunate about, and one of the reasons why we were able to get up and running so quickly, once we started seeing what could possibly come this way, probably in early February, we started making plans about, well, what happens if we shut down? Here's plan A, B, C. And that's what we're doing right now. We're looking at what's going to happen. What if we're able to get back in August? So how do we bring our kids back that need some remediation because of the educational slide that has happened over this time period? How can we get them back with us right away so we can work on that? If we're able to open in September, what's that going to look like, and how can we protect our students and our staff? So we have a couple of groups of people that are meeting. We're going through this. The other thing that we're looking at is how do we plan for the future? So next year, let's just say we get in for 2 months and then there's a resurgent and we go back out. So how do we make sure that we have the pieces in place to move ahead? I think there's so many different scenarios that we're just planning out each one, and at each one there's budget implications, and we're trying to map everything out.
How much of that in that budget is you gonna spend on Minot's building?
On what, Minot?
On the new building, on building in next year? Will those expenses, how much of those expenses will come out of?
Nothing for nothing for the new building next year. What we've tried to do is to put utility cost in, different maintenance cost into the Minot budget with the anticipation of when we do move into the new building, we have that money already
So it's
budgeted.
a 22 issue, right?
Pardon?
Fiscal year 22 issue.
Right,
Got
so fiscal 22. We just, because everyone knows, once you take money out, to put money back is so difficult. So what we've tried to make sure that we've left money in certain account lines at Minot, just because when we move over to the new building in 22, it needs to be there. And so we're guarding that zealously.
So Kip, I have a question then on a fiscal year 20, two parts, I guess. The first part is expenses, where the budget showed 29,432,000. So I guess my question would be, of that amount, how much will be spent or not spent? The second part of it is there's an income side in the sense of grants that you would receive for fiscal 20. Was there any short change or shortcoming on a grant? So kind of like the income and the revenue, how you figure the year will end?
Yeah, right now we're combing through all the POs that we have open, looking at, are they going to be spent? If not, we're closing them so we know where we're coming in at. Right now, I would tell you, we probably have a balance of about 8,900,000. Of course, a lot of that's salaries. And we're looking at what that's going to, where we're going to come in on June 30th. It's my goal to bring this in. Well, we certainly will not be overspending our budget this year. I can assure you of that. It's kind of, I would say if I can end the school year with anywhere from 500 to $1 million, I would be very happy. With some of that money, though, what we're looking at is, have we had to pay earlier in the year out of some revolving accounts? And if so, can we do some journal entries to move money back into the revolving? As you know, revolving can go over a 2-year period or can carry from year to year. And certainly we're trying to make sure that our revolving accounts have some money in for next year just because we don't know what's coming at us. And with reducing the budget to 29 million, we feel like we need a little bit of a cushion just because of all the unknown cost. As far as the grants, we've not received any reduction of grants. We have been told that we will not receive any reductions. We will be provided the amount that they said they would provide. The dilemma with that comes, when you write grants, they're very specific. And so we need to make sure that we use the grants for what they've been designated for.
Now, speaking of your grants, you typically fund your food services totally from grants. Under the circumstances, are you still able to stay within that area?
Yes, actually, our food service has made some money. And because of that, we've been able to do a $2 extra an hour for the workers just for this short time because they are just working from 6 o'clock until, solid days, providing the food. We've also been able to secure some grants from different agencies that help support feeding students. So we've been able to keep that going. As well, because of the money that we've been able to bring in with food service, we've been able to make some replacements of very old equipment that had been broken and that was not serviceable. So that's been a positive for us as well. I think last week, one of our freezers went down, and we just can't afford to have anything like that happen right now because the amount of food that we have in it. And we were able to make that repair, buy a new one, and not miss a beat. So certainly I'm very grateful to the management of Mr. Rousseau with our food service department.
Now, many of your school bus drivers are at the individual stations serving out that food. Are you still paying them out of your transportation budget?
We are paying them out of the transportation budget just because it would put the food service in the red if we did. And as we know, that can't happen. So yes, we are continuing to absorb that cost.
Have you encountered any additional or different cost based on having all of this computer operations with his teachers and interacting with the students?
No, not at all. Yeah, the cost that we know is coming with computers is our Chromebooks are hitting the 5-year mark. And so some of the licenses are now null and void. And we had been planning to make purchases of the Chromebooks. We had purchased a number of them probably in February with some of the town money that was voted to us. One of the questions that I'm looking at now is if we continue with first grade, that's going to be an additional 200 or so computers that will need to be purchased because the first grade computers need to be supported. And that's something that we're exploring. If there's money, we'd make that purchase. If there's not money, then we will not be making any purchase.
Kim, what is going to happen with food service during the summer? Are we maintaining it? Is it something different than normal? And how are we paying for it?
Right. Yes, we are going to be maintaining. In fact, we're looking, food service would normally stop on June 17th, our last day of school. We have had a discussion with our food service folks, and we're extending through the end of the fiscal year to June 30th. In the summer, beginning July, then our summer program kicks in, and then that will continue to feed students. Fiscally, with the reimbursement that we're receiving from the state, it's not a financial drain on food service at all.
Good.
You know, one of the other things that I would share with about food service, every year the government gives us X number of dollars of commodities. A lot of the commodities that they provide to us are frozen. Unfortunately, we're not in the position to use the frozen commodities now, like, I don't know, 80 pounds of chicken, vegetables, different kinds of food, but we're not serving hot meals. So we've contacted the food distribution in Marion, the food bank. And so we've arranged for this food to be delivered and donated to the families there, the group that feeds. Had we not done that, it would have gone back to the government. And so we felt like this was a much better use of the food, and we're very happy to donate.
Now, Kim, with all of this on the internet, how efficient, because you had mentioned having to do some remedial teaching when you brought the children back into the brick and mortar buildings. How extensive do you anticipate that may be?
Well, yeah, that's going to be, we've negotiated with a couple of our groups that we do testing. So like NOEA, so that will assess where students are at. And they have opened up the testing for us. It's for free. So when the minute our kids get back, or we can get access to them face to face, we're going to start that testing just to see where the slide has occurred. We would hope not to see very much. Unfortunately, we're not really sure. So we're really looking at, if, depending on how many kids, how do we schedule for that? Do we bring in, earmark special classes? Exactly how are we going to make that work for kids? So I can't really give you an answer of how many. I would hope to tell you none, but I know that's probably not accurate.
Well, if it's none, perhaps we could get rid of the brick and mortar schools.
Yeah, some of the comments that we've had from students is they really like the online. We've seen some students producing much more work than what we see face to face. But then we also see some students that are struggling and tell us how much they miss the teachers. And one even said, now we know why we really need to see our teachers. So I think it's done a nice opening of some people's eyes and the value. The thing that I'm a little surprised at, as educators, we all like and love to see our kids, but just the loss with our teachers that they've experienced by not being able to be in front of their classroom, that's been pretty significant. And I think for many of them, they were surprised at their reaction, which is
I've seen some of
positive.
the comments.
Yeah, which is very positive. I also would tell you, if you hadn't, our high school was named in the top 150. We were 149 schools in the state, and that's the first time we've ever broken that. So we were very proud of them. By the U.S. News and World Report, they put that report out. And so we're just, we were moving along. We're continuing to move. So we're very proud of what people are doing and the progress we're making. And we fully expect that it will just continue when we return.
Well, I would say with your staff and what you've accomplished, the accolades that you're receiving are inadequate.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. We're very fortunate.
Any other questions, gentlemen, ladies?
Bernie,
Yes, Joyce.
is it okay for me to ask a question? I wasn't sure.
You will, yes, we'll allow that.
Okay. So you asked earlier of Dr. Shaver Hood about negotiating with the unions currently. So I guess my question would be, on the town side, is the same thing happening? because as you can imagine, it's very difficult. So I was just wondering about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost an insulting question. Dr. Shaverhood and I have been working closely on that. And we started it, and I started with myself at the selectmen's meeting. So yes, we have reached out. And my understanding is, especially in a town like us, sometimes the reps and the people that are not the reps don't necessarily know what's going on. So yes.
Well, I certainly don't.
Yes, I'd really like to finish. Yes, of course, we're reaching out to our employees, our union members, and speaking to them about it. And in fact, that's why it's just a little bit of confusing. And the first thing, and I understand it, the first thing they said, well, are the schools going to take them this time as well? So this whole school versus town thing, I don't buy into it. We're the same team.
I did not mean it as an insult. In fact, at our last union negotiation, I'm the one who spoke up and said that this is a group effort. Anyone who was at that meeting could tell you that. And so I guess my question is just I just want a little reassurance of what I've already been out there saying, explaining to our employees, who of course aren't happy when they're asked these questions, when they're asked to take a 0% raise. And again, I was the one who spoke up and said, I don't know what's happened in the past. Some of these people who were at the negotiation table have had bad experiences in the past. But at the last meeting we had, I'm the one who said that we're not living in the past. This is, currently the town and the school have a very good relationship. The town has always, in my experience, been very supportive of the schools. So I'm just taking this opportunity to ask that question to reassure myself, because that's what I'm saying in these meetings. And so that's why I did not mean it as an insult. If I don't ask the question, I don't get the answer. And I have you here to answer that question. So I took advantage of that. I did not mean it as an insult. Anyone who knows me knows that if I have a question, I'm just going to ask it. Yeah.
The only way you get the answer.
Exactly. And when anyone has a question of me, they get the honest answer from me too. So.
Indeed, and both sides, municipal or school, you both have to deal with the primary reason for your budget, and that's salaries.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we're all talking about people too that have children, families, each individual. And so try to be as fair as possible, but the reality is there. We all have to share in it.
Right. And so I appreciate this opportunity to be in this meeting today and be able to ask that question and hear it from you. So thank you.
Good. Anything else?
Now, I would just like to, even though this has been a very difficult situation for everyone and very unknown, just the support that has been extended to the school district by the town, by the Board of Selectmen, by the town administrator, by the finance committee, is certainly very grateful. And as Derek said, we're in this together, and that's how we approach everything. So thank you for your help. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Questions, gentlemen, ladies? I just want to say that I've been on the periphery at times of disaster recovery planning, and it usually ends up with these huge 3-ring binders on a bookshelf, and something happens and someone runs to a binder. I don't think there's any binder on any bookshelf that can describe what we're going through right now. And I must commend the staff that runs this town of Wareham and its leaders as a fantastic job they're doing.
Thank you.
Anything else? Yes, Alan.
Just ask Kim. I've sent emails constantly about what's been going on, keep her in the loop of the stuff at the state level. On the CARES Act money you got, are you going to have a paper trail to send back to show the money's as expended? Because that's going to be a difficult thing. It's really critical that the paperwork's correct so you can get the money.
Yeah, yes. We've decided that we are not going to be taking any of the money for this current fiscal year. we're planning on taking it next year and the year after. And I think it's quarterly that we have to turn in the reports. So yeah, we're starting to figure out what our reporting system will be and what lines. Again, we would like to take it out of anything but personnel, just because we don't want to give the extra 8% to MTRS. So, yeah, we're getting ready to figure out how we're going to identify it, because you're right, we've got to track things.
I would probably, suggest that, working with Derek, even with Patrick McDonald, et cetera, because we had, I think with MEMA, we had that storm a few years back. And in order to get the money back, we had to track it. So I know they make it very difficult paper-wise. Thankfully, you got the money up front, whereas the other way, I believe we're still waiting for funds from that storm.
Okay.
I was wondering also from Kim or Derek, on the county level, they've got about $92 million over there. And I was talking with Sandy Wright, my friend, and she wasn't sure what they were going to do with it as yet. But I think we could give her a lot of ideas as what they can do with the 92 million.
We could.
Give it back to the governor. Hip hip hooray for them.
Yeah, tomorrow at 10 a.m. there's a Zoom meeting with with Plymouth County over the CARES Act, the funding, and some of the issues. So they'll be the first go about. I know that they have people in place specifically for this program, and we work well with Plymouth County. So one of the other items we've done is we've removed somebody that worked in the police department, altered their position. She used to work for Wareham Fire really did a tremendous job getting all of their funding back through these storms, through MEMA and such. And we've reallocated her to just doing this work, tracking it, and making sure we're getting every dollar back that we can. And she's more than paying for herself. So.
Very good. Anything else, Kim?
No, thank you.
Oh, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And of course, now, Derek, I believe it's your turn.
That's a tough act to follow there.
Well, when children are involved, it's really tough.
So, all right, everybody. So it's a long time no physically see. Bernie and I have been speaking and emailing every now and again. So as you know, probably, I don't know if I sent it out to the finance committee, but on March 17th, we froze all discretionary funding, especially non-contractual. Any expenditures need to go through the finance director, John Foster. Patrick McDonald, who serves as our emergency management director, has been working on getting things through MEMA, such as face masks and PPE and such. Dr. Hood has been tremendous in this, and speaking in that we're all one team. Some of the supplies that the schools had, where she gave right over to us, to our first responders and such, which was tremendous, especially in the beginning. So it helped us out before we could get some of the MEMA supplies. This obviously isn't an easy road for any of us. Our first responders, police, EMS have been out there working very hard, and we appreciate everything that they do. We've had, like some other communities, we've kept our town hall working on site. Some others, while we're close to public, we still have people coming in and such. So it's been an effective use of time. And although we set a time limit on how long they're supposed to be in the town hall and staggered teams, we still have people that are sneaking in working extra hours, and those are salaried employees. So and they aren't asking for it. So I can tell you the effort coming out of the employees is second to none. So that makes it especially hard, like we said, asking for freezes or potential furloughs or even layoffs, because we have so many people more than pulling their load. But when it comes down to it, we only have a certain amount of dollars, and that's what we're looking at. And our ultimate goal is, we think that either through freezes or potentially furloughs, that's the best way to keep our staff and make sure that they are still in next fiscal year, that they still have money on the table rather than layoffs. And it's a difficult time. We had our S&P bond rating call for the new school debt yesterday. I believe it was yesterday, Monday, excuse me, and it went really well. But we were about a month ago or 2 months ago, we were expecting a different scenario and thought that we could potentially go even higher. So this whole global pandemic thing seems almost personal when it comes down to it. It's just when we're climbing out of the hole. And as we said, to having some children and stuff, just 1 second. I'm gonna... And that was Nora. And she's been playing hard, if you can tell by her face. I need actually 2 minutes because the guys to fix the well water, which they were fixing on Monday, we finally got back, are here for a quick follow-up. So I apologize if you can just talk for 2 minutes. I'm going to get them in through the bulkhead and be right back.
Very good.
So these are the joys of these Zoom conference calls.
Excuse me, able to print out the reports that Derek had given me this morning?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. I have a question of when he returns on his, the expenditure budget to actual report, which handles each of the individual departments. The column that says original budget, I'm wondering if that's the original proposal for FY21. And of course, there's a revised, which is self-evident. And also on the revenue fixed expense, smaller one, that was just the revenues, please note at the bottom or the second page, he has a negative of 1.6 million as a projected shortfall. I don't believe the legislature has voted on how they're going to handle the cherry sheet. There was some talk they're going to try with maintaining the levels that the original proposed in January, hopefully their stabilization fund. But as I said, that's purely discussion. Alan might have a little more information on it since he's on these meetings with MMA and the legislature more frequently.
Unfortunately, the governor's budget is as it is, but the House and Senate are going back in and are going to be cutting the budget. So they're not going to maintain what Governor Baker put through. We had reports for the month of April. Revenues for the month of April of 2020 was down 54% from a year ago, same month. Things like the meals tax, money's coming in, was down 58%. They're expecting a shortfall for fiscal 20 of $830 million. So the answer is the budget for 21 will be cut from what it was.
Yeah, mass tax had a projection of an overall reduction of about 14%.
Yeah, they went from $4 billion shortfall on the projected benchmark revenue to now it's over $6 billion. So unfortunately, all we have is $3.5 billion in that rainy day fund. They'll use the 830, shortfall, use money from that. But basically, depending on how bad this goes and how long it goes, that $6 billion could be conservative also. So we're going to have to expect more. Not to be really negative, but when we had this issue a few years back, think around 2008, 2009, they cut the UGA, which is the unrestricted, government assistance, by 25%. Thankfully, the schools were not hit as hard. It was only 10%. But either one of those numbers would be frightening for us.
Now they're using the 2008 or 9 as a benchmark.
Yeah, that's what Derek is using actually. And what's happening is that the federal government, there's going to be another round of monies. And we're basically lobbying for the federal government to basically go directly to the cities and towns for stabilization and operational expenses. And there's another possibility coming down, another CARES Act, to basically recover the lost revenues, that we've been experiencing as well. So we have to watch all this carefully because it will affect how we do things. We might be able to recover if it all happens, but with the dysfunction at the federal level, I'm not sure how this is going to go. So we have to be extremely conservative in what we do and how we figure out where we're going to go. We can't absorb any, unnecessary expense at this time.
Oh, indeed. And the trickle down effect doesn't always reach the bottom.
I prefer the trickle up theory, but they don't believe that. So we just have to be very cautious. I give Derek credit. He's been very conservative. And thankfully, we kept to that 5% of our budget, for the stabilization fund. And it's going to be critical for us. That's it.
I'm just sitting here musing in my own head that I think the FY21 is going to end up being easier to cope with than the FY22. A lot of these small businesses, as I've been listening to the talk radio on the Cape, they're concerned that a lot of the summer businesses just aren't going to open. They just got too many bills in overhead left that they're not going to make up.
It was interesting. We were discussing, abatements and stuff for real estate, and everybody thinks that, for the coming year, for 21, will be a lot of money requested. But they base that on the fiscal year, 2019, for the valuations. But the year 2022, we're expecting a very large amount of requests for abatements on property values. So that's another area we have to adjust as well.
Hey, folks, I appreciate your patience and sorry about that. When it comes to having running water, I will put you second fiddle. I'm sorry. So we started, I think, Bernie, did you say was everybody able to get a copy of that?
I think most of us were, and the only question I had of your general fund copy, you had a column labeled original budget and one revised budget. Is the original budget the original proposed FY21?
No, this is, I'm sorry, Barry, I sent a subsequent one. I realized that this is our year-to-date revenue expenditure, and then there's another one that's reduced revenue scenario.
Yes.
I think Tom has that. This one right here is your monthly revenue and expenditure report.
Okay.
So, and that was just looking through there. One of the good news is when it comes through our revenue, we've just hit just about hit our benchmarks for local receipts now, which is perfect. And obviously that was aided by the marijuana revenue before they temporarily shut down retail. So that's one of the big ones. So we believe that this fiscal year's budget, FY20, we will be solid on. And that's why we're requesting turnbacks and such. So anything the school, obviously, with Dr. Shaverhood and I have been talking, and she's being helpful on that. And I understand her situation, and we'll always ask for more turnbacks. So from our end, we're aiming to have a little over $200,000 from the town's budget, and that's saved from some frozen positions and not spending some money at the end. And unfortunately, the big portion of that's coming from some of the municipal maintenance expenditures that usually happen at this time of year. And that's going to be one of the things. We were getting some emails and such about the streets not being swept yet and certain things. And I don't think people actually understood that we were we were going with basically two different staff, an A and B team, to make sure that if somebody got sick, it wasn't exposing our entire staff, so we could keep operations going. And just going through these, I mean, the main ones, the only ones we're looking at for potential transfers as of right now is short-term debt. We'll need to transfer into that, and there'll be a higher number because things like the bond rating, that rating call, that can cost you $18,000. And so that's a one-time cost, which usually, we budget for, but didn't have in there. So we'll transfer. Our FICA looks with some of the retro payments and such. We've calculated it out. It's a little hard to do because you can't factor in where you are to this fiscal year, because you have the summer payments, if you will, to the teachers that technically pay a little bit further, if you will, the way it looks like. So we'll probably have to transfer about 20,000 into that one. And those are really the main ones. Otherwise, health insurance, we ate into the health reserve this year of 150,000, but that's built into the budget. So we're looking at turnbacks a little bit over $100,000 in health insurance. And that was, we had just the large changes. It wasn't really hiring more people. It was people transferring from single family plans and life events. So going through this fiscal year, we're doing well. And the key part is, as we're doing well, is to turn back as much money as possible to help build for our general fund balance for next fiscal year. But we obviously are going to freeze any of our capital spending and most of our free cash expenditures. And that's where I want to go into, if we can, to the FY21 reduced budget, especially through the revenues, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, go right ahead.
So the first change you'd see is that we're looking potentially in roughly a 10% reduction in new growth. Part of that is from local knowledge. I know at least 5 properties that could not be hooked up to water in time to get the certificate of occupancy, which looks like that we won't pick them up as full new growth for this fiscal year, and a couple other items. And just, we're still getting in a lot of permits, and our inspectional services department's been doing an excellent job. They've been going out to work sites, being safe, but they've been inspecting and still working. So that's been tremendous. But we see a potential slowdown of permits. Looking at our local aid, that is the most difficult thing that we can try and propose right now, and that is, we just don't know. This administration, clearly the governor and lieutenant governor are very supportive of municipalities. They came up through the ranks and they've been doing tremendous things to keep us going, but I'm projecting what I feel is a fairly conservative 10% cut to our local government, which is unrestricted, Chapter 78 as well. I've heard talk of as high as 25%. And I've heard people saying they're not doing anything to it. The problem is, we will not probably know what the state budget is till about November, when it really comes down to it. And my problem with that is, if we don't plan for a conservative number, if the state aid comes in and the budget's adopted in November, we are now trying to take remedial actions over roughly 6 to 7 months and make up a year's worth of cuts. So if you need to roughly cut 1.2 million in the middle of the fiscal year, well, that's equivalent to a $2.4 million cut. So I think we need to be conservative now, take these, and work together. Again, nobody like I said, nobody likes asking people for freezes or furloughs and such. And if on a pure selfish level, my life would be a lot easier if I didn't have to. But there's some realities out there, and I think we need to take these steps and be honest with the employees what the potential for happening is, and then work with them in the future. And that's what we've done over the last few years. And I think it's we can all get together. That's the way it really can work out. So if you look at it, when we're looking at the roughly 10% cuts, it's versus when I went through this, I looked at what they've proposed versus what they actually, what the cherry sheets proposed versus not the previous fiscal year, but the FY21 original proposition. The only change I've made since the selectmen is veterans benefits. My understanding, since that's a reimbursement, potentially we will keep the 75% reimbursement. So I've leveled that out and kept that at the $253,000 number. So all told, when you look at it from the school aid, we could lose about over 1.4 million. Local government, 300,000. So that's almost 1.75 in just those categories. And those are some pretty hefty hits. Going down to motor vehicle excise tax, this is an interesting one because we hit a negative trend, but it bounced right back up. So if you look at our actual collections in FY19, it was a little over 3 million. But our commitments are actually for this fiscal year that we're in right now are over 3.4 million, and we're doing well on those. So even with keeping it at the 2.9 million is really a reduction there. You're not seeing it. So it's a reduction versus what our actuals will be. Local meals, that's been a tough one, and I go back and forth because we know that the original, I was as low as 25% for the first disbursement, but I know my understanding is the Commonwealth went down 50% on meals tax projected revenue for April. However, we know there's takeout and there's other things still going. So cutting that in half, I still think from what we're doing business-wise between the takeout and everything, that is a solid number for 2 quarters. Unfortunately, it's some of our best quarters right there. And then we move back up to the 75% for the next quarter's disbursement, which brings us to about a $127,000 reduction in that category from what we've budgeted. We've done fairly well. FY19, we had almost 585,000, and that had been trending up. But let's face it, unfortunately, there's going to be some places that don't bounce back from this. So, and there's going to be some people that won't eat out anymore. So I think it's a fair reduction. The local rooms occupancy tax is the tough one. When you look at it, so I'm projecting potentially two quarters of nothing when it comes down to it. This is the hotel motel, and we potentially could, just depending on the way things are, we could potentially lose out that much. And I thought that was a fair way to go about it, rather than going back and forth on percentage wise. And that's about $140,000 reduction. And the short-term rental tax, we have no data on that. And so far, as you know, it's been basically mandated that you cannot do short-term Airbnb rentals. I'm assuming that's going to be lifted sooner rather than later, but we don't know what sort of travel will be going on. My hope is, given what we're seeing with airlines, that they're canceling routes, some of the bankruptcies and actually increasing the cost of flights and people's general fear that it'll lead to more domestic travel and vacations this summer if there are any. And that's unfortunately, that's a big driver for us. So we definitely need to be concerned about that. The rest of these are pretty self-explanatory, just doing a 5% reduction, as we have not seen a real heavy amount in these, and we already usually budget these around 90% of the prior fiscal year's actuals. Miscellaneous recurring, we know we're going to lose that trash revenue. This will, my proposal, which will lead to a net change in the general fund balance, if you will, is to use the roughly $200,000 we receive in net metering money. So in other words, we have a 7 megawatt project in Plymouth that we're a part of, where we receive all their solar credits. And then right now it's just increased in our favor. We give them back 80% of the revenue and we capture 20% of that. So before it was about, I think, 160, so up to 200. So with this new amount, we're projecting about $300,000 to $360,000. And we used to let that roll, and we're planning on maybe starting to put that towards energy efficient projects. But that may be one to just try and keep our local receipts steady. We start bringing some of that revenue back into the budget to offset the loss of the trash revenue. Because otherwise we'd be looking at almost an additional $150,000 reduction. So all told, we're looking at projecting local receipts at almost a $500,000 reduction. And that's, I was a little bit higher with the selectmen, but I've done a couple things such as the net metering and the veterans assessment to offset some of those hits. We never want to use stabilization fund. Unfortunately, it's an available fund still labeled at free cash. It should be stabilization, but we could use between $500,000 and $600,000 of our stabilization fund and still be within the 5% range. I would, in case this is a multi-year event, I would not recommend going higher than that, because next year to bolster that, you almost have to double it when you think about it. If you subsidize your budget for $600,000 this year, you're doing 600 plus whatever the growth is on top of that. So, I mean, if we kept it at a $500,000 to $600,000 level and we had to keep on bolstering, using that to keep the budget stable, that would give us roughly, it'd be about a 3-year run. And we're lucky to have it, right? Because it's, I think when at one point the town had $60,000, and when I came on board, I think it was around $400,000 in stabilization. So there's a lot of people that have had their eye on these funds, and we're lucky to have it. And I appreciate the finance committee and the board of selectmen having the guidance to do this. It's what's made it work. So the rest of these you'll see are just sort of the same general ones. So, and while you see two numbers in red, we're really at about just under $2.3 million deficit if we bring in that trash money and the veterans. And if we bring in the stabilization fund, then we're looking at about 1.7 million. So when you see Dr. Shaver-Hood and speaking to her, one of the things is we're really looking at least a total level funding for both our budgets, potentially a little worse, just seeing how things work out. So in the expenses outside of, if you go down to fixed costs, you'll see two reductions, one in debt principal, one in debt short term. If you remember, we were trying to keep the debt at a level budget, And in case we had to bring in funding such as the police station, and generally your debt level within outside of excluded debt should be 3 to 5% of your operating budget. And clearly we're nowhere near that. We're less than 1% when it really looks, when you look at it. But if you're going to ask me of whether it's going to be a policy versus a person, I think I would rather do, reduce the funds here and move on and try and build that up in the future. The next items are workers' comp and the general professional liability. Between some of the credits we get and the new pricing, we can reduce those by about 65,000. And the next one is unemployment. And this is where free cash comes in. I've been thinking about unemployment for a while. We've, depending on when, we use about 75,000 to 200,000 to 300,000 a year. When the times are tough, it was closer to the 200,000 to 300,000 level. What I think is we should remove it from the budget, fund through free cash $300,000 into an article for unemployment, and then every year we can add to that through free cash. And if we go to where we're leveling on our unemployment, we don't have to put money in that year. The danger is you have 1 year where you have a massive amount of unemployment, but honestly, $300,000 should cover us on that. But this is for lack of a better term, a cheap and easy way to remove $200,000 worth of expenses out of the budget. And it's almost an accounting transfer when you think of it, but we take it out of the budget and that helps us clear up about $200,000 of deficit. And, frankly, if we build that up to where it stays at $300,000, why should we be putting money in that for a few years? And I think we basically did that with the stabilization fund. If you remember, they used to put $150,000 from the budget annually into the stabilization fund. And we changed that practice because it was at those times when we were doing layoffs and such, we said, why are we keeping this in when we're laying people off? And I think this can work out for us as well. We just need to be strict about it, which we've shown that we can be. The next item is medical insurance. We already received the rates, which are 2% increases. The town and the unions have agreed prior to the pandemic to keep the splits right around where they are, actually 68-32 instead of 67.5, 32.5, which was a $50,000 increase to the town, but it was manageable to lock in another 5-year deal on health insurance splits. This has us, right around the midpoint. And when we certainly think it's a great way to retain talent and attract talent. So, but the dental, when you look at it, it's a 3-year agreement, and the increases are 0.66, which is right in line, and that's so next year's is 0, which will yield some savings, and it'll be 6% thereafter. A 6% increase is roughly $19,000 annually. So when we bring that down, you would see that we would still be at the, this is if you do some of the freezes and reductions. We're still at over a million some odd thousand. So, that's really where we stand on it. So if we can do some of these reductions and pay freezes, we can get right around the 0 budget. And the thing is, just asking the employees to work with us. And I know it's not an easy thing. Many of us, what I've been saying, are very lucky to have our jobs. It's not the when a lot of people have not been working, have been unable to work and such, we still were getting a paycheck. So we should be thankful and try and work together to come up with something.
Derek, have you heard from Superintendent Dutch at all for Upper Cape?
Yes, he and I had talked, and they will not be adjusting their request, even if there's a state aid reduction.
Interesting.
So.
And also, don't we have a large payment due December 31st or January 1st for the trash?
It's not a payment. It's we're going to change over. After we used to receive money from the from Covanta,
Yeah.
town did. We will no longer receive that, and that was really in the revenue. And the cost for trash, that's not really. We're looking at it. Even if it's a town operation, it's a town operation that would have to be funded by sale of stickers and sale of bags as well, because we can't absorb the trash costs for the community.
Oh,
You'd be looking at about a $1.7 million easily hit.
when can we anticipate getting your estimate for the salary and expense for each of the departments?
I know we're coming up close to the town meeting, but it'd probably be closer to the end of this month. So,
Okay, because we have only about 5 weeks left.
yeah. And I know we could do a 1/12 budget and such, but again, like I said, if we went with the 1/12 budget, it's not really a 1/12. There's different departments such as IT where they spend 90% of their expense budget in almost the first week of the year, because that's when all their fiscal year contracts are. And we save a couple $100,000 by paying retirement up front and paying our Maya bills as well. So if we went with the 1/12 budget, it would not be a true 1/12 budget.
And you've also opted not to go into the enterprise fund surplus or the retained earnings for EMS for balancing. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So we do have the availability with the legislature. We could use the enterprise fund retained earnings. I just know what that will do going forward in the community. We've heard it. We heard it from years before that the town is stealing from the sewer fund, yada yada yada, and it's even though I don't think people actually understand that an enterprise fund is an accounting mechanism, and at the end of the day, that even in a regular town meeting, you could vote those retained earnings to the general fund budget. It's perfectly allowable. I just don't see that being enough of a benefit right now.
No, it'd be 60% of the town would be complaining.
Yeah, and it is a town department. It is under our charter. It is not a separate entity, and it is still under us. So,
don't you also need state approval to touch the retained earnings?
you would, with the new legislation, I would have to look through that, but usually you can go to town meeting through your legislative body to do it. So,
Yeah, I think it's you have to go to an individual in DOR,
yeah.
but it's a done deal pretty much.
Yeah, it's usually, I think it's like, we usually, Mary Jane Handy, we have to send a letter every year to do the what do you call it, the EMS, to do the offset receipts. So it's probably pretty similar. We haven't had to do it before and haven't thought about doing it. We usually just have the indirect direct costs within the budget itself. So.
Yeah. Questions, if anyone?
Derek,
Oh, go ahead, Jerry.
on the unemployment, if you're going to do it through a warrant article, do you need to have another warrant article to take it out to pay?
No, we already have one to transfer available funds.
Okay. Another question here. On the school, I don't understand where the Kimberly said 29,087, but you have a different figure. You have the 3231.
Yep, the 323116 is what we had projected for a final budget for them. And then Kim was talking about what we've requested for an updated number. So, and if you look, when we're doing the balancing of the budget, we do it, I brought it as a just a level funded item right now for 29,430 and stuff like that. So,
But so then are you requesting the 29,087 from her, or you're still requesting that, I guess, but for the purpose of the presentation here, you level funded it?
correct.
And then that level funding then flows through to your bottom line here where you're showing a deficit.
Correct. So we can go through, we can make our request. If certain things trend better, what we can do is at the end is you say, hey, this is the final split. And it's happened a few years before where we've projected one number and certain things have come in lower. And then you say, hey, by the way, there's an extra 100,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's not really extra, but you know what I mean? You don't have to lay off one other person or something like that.
It's extra for you, it's serious for me.
So,
Thank you.
Any other questions, gentlemen? Jody?
Just making sure that I understood you right. Going into the town meeting this year, we're going to present the budget as it was presented earlier.
no, we're going to present a balanced budget with the new
Let me
code.
rephrase, the departments, as far as department wages and expenses, that's pretty much going to stay.
No,
Same.
those will be reduced because some of the wages will be through either freezes, furloughs, or layoffs will be changed. Salaries. So, if you freeze the salaries, there's no adjustment basically from the FY20 number. Furloughs, they'll get their raises, but then they are laid off for a couple days, or you do an hour a week or something like that, their pay is reduced by, which brings their pay back down, even though they had a salary increase. So, and layoffs are layoffs, so that could change and that's what's difficult for departments that might be understaffed is the way some of the union contracts work with seniority and stuff. You could have departments losing staff that they desperately need. So, but without being rude, we've proved in the past, we need staff, but when push comes to shove, we've made the cuts and such. So that's what you have to do.
As in our presentation to the town meeting, we will more typically just give the town meeting the information of the total salaries and the total expense instead of having, it's up to, of course, town administrator if he wants the department to present detailed budget to us. But I think that's a quick way to accomplish the end result that we're after. It allows the departments the flexibility within their operation.
Yeah, I know when I dug down on all the budgets when you thought I was being a pain, I wouldn't want to be in a position of cutting anybody. I just don't know how they run some of these departments as they stand now. I mean, they really step up to the plate and do a good job.
Thank you. And that's the difficult thing. We've got great employees that are working hard for us, and departments that go above and beyond, and to ask this of them, it's it does not feel good. And I think the general public needs to realize too that these reductions are going to be reductions in services as well when it comes down to it. So, and that's That's where we're at. It's not do more with less. It's do less with less. Every cut is less.
Are you still gonna move forward with the public safety building?
That is really a great question. And one of the killers is taking some of that funding out of the budget. And I think we've got the chairperson on right now of the committee, who I'm going to blame because it's just because we finally came up with this, and she started going forward, and it's her fault we had a pandemic because we were going to finally get the new police station.
So that's a big maybe.
Yeah, that's a big I don't know.
We'll have to re-examine how that article was worded.
So, and it's not to make light of the situation. It's just tough. When it comes down to it, in the last recession, we all know Wareham was hit harder than a lot of the other areas, and it felt like we'd finally climbed out of the hole, and we're doing more and trying to get more services to our residents. So it's difficult to take a step backwards.
Well, we got all the sidewalks repainted.
Yeah, they did a really nice job. I mean, as soon as municipal maintenance was working full shifts again, they started really going at it. So, and they were working beforehand, So it's tough. So you're not doing two people in a truck or anything like that. And we're going to be changing the way we do business, I think.
Are you saying our own crew did all the painting?
They did. So they have some of the painting, and then they work with some of the other folks. And anytime I told Mr. Menard too, I think we got some extra funds in on one of either the Chapter 90s grant, which actually came in. I told them to spend it before they can take it back on doing some other stuff. And get the projects going. So
it seemed almost like every sidewalk was painted overnight.
Yeah, and it's what's really tough is we were coming into a great position. We didn't have we had a great snow and ice year. We're probably turning back 200,000 from the snow and ice budget, and which meant municipal maintenance was going to be able to do a couple extra spring things like Standpipe Hill and such as that going forward, and up in smoke. So it's tough. It's a little disheartening, but again, our people keep on working. They keep their chins up, and we appreciate it.
Well, I hope David had topped off his snow and ice piles.
If he hasn't, I know that 200 will be a little bit less. So. But yeah, I mean, those guys are out there and going through the cemeteries, mowing it, and doing everything possible. So.
Yes, Mother's Day. My gosh.
Yeah.
Anything else, gentlemen, ladies? Yes.
Derek, were you speak about the issuance of bonds for the school? Were you able to get out there and get some good rates, and have you got all the money you need, or bonded money in yet, or?
That's what the Monday call was for the bond rating agency with S&P Global, and we'll see what happens after that. I think it was a fairly good call. After when we finished, you get the caveat that they could ask for more information, or their overall guidance for issuance could change. So, but I think we're in a fairly good spot, and I'm hoping for no changes from before. Before this happened, the rates were extremely favorable, and we're going to look way better than what we projected. I'm still hoping we come in better than what we originally projected, but it won't be it doesn't seem to be the once in a lifetime anymore.
Okay.
Anything else? And Derek, I think I had requested from Judy a year-to-date December 31st report. And I'm not sure if she's in the office to do that or not.
That the one you just got actually should be through that's the explanation on there. I think it's through March 23rd with some of the payroll and such. So that's the most up to date. If you want it, I can go back for the December as well. If you.
If the membership wants it, we'll ask for it, but as long as we have one that goes to the 26th.
Yeah, I know that Missy had given me the info on there. That's town payrolls are posted through week ending 3/21/20, which is the 3/26 pay date. And
Yes,
so the vendor warrants are paid through May 7th, 20. So we're trying to get the most up to date on this.
okay.
And another thing, again, it's one of the things we're trying to say is all the turnbacks and such, especially not spending free cash, except maybe creating that unemployment fund, if you will. And anything we're turning back is just going to help our bottom line and potentially help us retain what services we can do. We don't usually use free cash for our operating budget, obviously, but having that money aside is what's going to really help if our balances start getting lower. So.
Well, you have the opportunity of using other funds as a result of the legislation.
Yeah.
So I think in just your decision to use free cash, it was one or the other. And you, as we've discussed, are more comfortable doing it with free cash than touching stabilization or anything else.
Yeah, for the retained earnings. So
Yes.
we'll see. So, and thank you all. I appreciate it. I'm glad everyone see all your faces, and that's not being facetious. It's good. Yeah.
So did you miss us?
I look forward to when we start meeting in person again. So thank you all. I appreciate your service.
Thank you, Derek.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we go on to something else? None? Okay. I was hoping to cover some of the warrant articles. Most of the articles for the annual town meeting we have voted on. The only ones are the money ones that we haven't voted. So I would think if you would like to get an opportunity to refresh your memories as to what they were looking like and some questions you may have, we'll be meeting, I'm going to hopefully next week, if you agree. The special town meeting, we really haven't done anything on that yet. So I would suggest just refresh your memories, give it a read, and we'll take some votes on them perhaps next week. And if in the interim you have some questions, by all means, let me know. And we'll see if we can have a guest or two on to give you some background. I think you wanted some satisfaction on the annual one for the FEMA floodplain. You had a lot of questions on that. So perhaps and with a couple other things, we'll have some guests next week. Is that all agreeable with everyone?
Yes.
Wednesdays?
Yes.
And this is an exciting time, gosh.
Say, Bernie, on the regular spring, we deferred on Article 9, which was the Upper Cape Regional Tech School budget. Are we ready to go on that one next week? Or why did we defer? I'm not sure.
I think we just didn't have an opportunity to vote on it. That was all. We were going to wait on it. And of course, into February, we were starting to have questions about the budget. But I'm disappointed to find they're not going to make any adjustments at all.
I think the Upper Cape one that we had was a draft, and they wanted to see the actual finished product with Upper Cape.
Okay, and I have the entire budget. I'll scan it in and send it off to each of you.
Yeah, the number I'm going with is 3,703,661. So, and I guess I understand what you're saying, Bernie. I guess what they're saying in a way is that they're not going to try and charge us extra if if the state aid goes down. So there's a good and a bad to it.
Okay.
So I have to go real quick, and to talk to the gentleman, but I appreciate you and have a
Thank you very much, Eric.
Thank you. Be safe, be healthy.
Indeed. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Yes, Alan.
On the FEMA, just so everybody understands, they probably aren't in the loop. We got a letter back about 3 weeks ago from the FEMA, basically saying that you had to approve the maps by a certain date. One was June 8th, one was July 12th or something. There's 32 communities that are involved with this particular problem. And if any one of the communities like rescinds, doesn't vote on it, doesn't rescind, it affects all 32, even if we pass it. So this whole FEMA thing is a real mess right now. FEMA will not back away from these dates. We have legislation pending right now at the State House that we put through. I did it through SERPED because we have 14 communities in the SERPED region involved. The problem is that there's a possibility that if someone rescinds and we all get bounced out, that we may not have any real flood insurance coverage for 2 or 3 months or more during the hurricane season. So we're trying to get this resolved. There hasn't been a lot of noise about it, but we've been working really hard in the background trying to get this resolved. I'll give you an update once I hear how the article is going. I think it's Representative Cutler has actually written an article. Actually, Rich Bowen's helped him as well. But we've been going back and forth for the last 3 weeks real hard on this because it's a real problem.
Yes, by all means, please keep us updated.
Will do.
Anything else? Nothing? Wow. I want to thank you all. I see you're all well. You sound well, and that's a pleasure. Have a full membership that way. Well, okay. So you know how no one wants to jump in with anything. Thank you very much.
You need a motion to adjourn?
Okay, well, so moved. May I have a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded by someone. Say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Click closed. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Be well.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Bernie.